So my name is Alistair Gordon. I'm one of the master facilitators of our expertship programs, where we're for the company called Expertunity, which is a subsidiary of a slightly larger business that is a leadership consultancy called HFL. And Expertunity has been set up specifically to do what it says there on the bottom of the slide, which is unleash the power of technical experts. And we're going to focus this morning on the challenge of leading technical experts. We've been running some programs called Leader of Experts for literally people running those sort of teams. And so I'm going to take you through some of the insights that we've had that we hope will be useful for you either individually or will be useful for those of you who are in the OD, L&D space in terms of supporting your leaders of experts. I'm ably helped today by Darren Fox, who's going to be running chat for me. So what Darren has total permission to do, not that he needs permission, is to interrupt me at any stage with any really good questions that people have. So if you please feel free to shoot that into chat. I won't be looking at chat. I'll be focusing on trying to get through my 31 slides in approximately 25 minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to kick off. So first and foremost, let's this is the agenda. So we're going to be talking about, how does leading technical experts present leaders with unique challenges? What are they? How do they show up? What have managers told us about those challenges? And I'm going to leverage a huge amount of content that literally leaders have told us in the workshops that we've done. And a lot of anecdotal evidence, obviously, that we have as experts who are working with experts in leadership programs. How do these challenges show up? And then what do we do about it? How do we equip our leaders of experts to handle these challenges effectively? I'm going to do a manifesto for action, so how internal OD and L&D teams can help their leaders of experts. There's 5 things that we think you can do pretty much for free starting tomorrow morning, or if you're in Sydney today. And then we're going to do a 60 seconds shameless plug on our leader of experts, and it will be, I promise you, shameless, but it's at the end, so it means you can just click off if you're really bored with it. So let's talk about leaders of experts. So first thing to say is there is no clear black and white scenario in terms of leaders of experts. There's a whole variety, if you like, lots of flavors. So the first flavor is the same domain leaders. These are people who, for example, might be an actuary. They've become a leader of a team of actuaries, and therefore they're leading a team of experts. They're in the same domain as them. And as you might imagine, that makes things slightly easier. Then there's people who are different domain leaders. So this might be an actuary, for example, who has suddenly been put in charge of a whole pile of finance business partners. Why you do that with an actuary, I'm not quite sure, but it does happen. So this is an instance where you've got an expert or a leader of experts who's actually managing a group of people and they're not from their own domain. And then you can imagine you've got something that's a bit of both. And interestingly enough, a bit of both is quite typical, where that actuary might be running a team of actuaries, but he also, or she also might be, running a team of finance business partners or data analysts or what have you. So there's one part of their leadership role where they're pretty comfortable about the technical domain, and there's another area where they're uncomfortable. And it'll be no surprise to all of you on the call that, the areas of most difficulty is where you are leading people who are more expert than you are, and it's a real challenge. So most of the comments that we're going to be making as we go along really are focused on the area of most difficulty. But I might say we've had a lot of same domain leaders on these programs and exposed to these sorts of things, and they still have quite a few challenges. Because even if you are, an experienced actuary, one of your team might have specialized in a particular area, and therefore they have deeper domain knowledge than you do. So that's who we're talking about. What makes leading experts more challenges? Now, we've had conversations with OD and L&D people who've said to us, well, we don't think there is any difference in the challenge. And so I'm hoping I'm going to be able to persuade you in the next sort of 20 minutes or so that actually there are some of them are subtle and some of them are obvious differences. And how we've decided to call them is, there's a series of gaps that are creating: authority gap, relationship gap, contribution gap, prioritization gap, activity gap, performance gap, and career gap. My goodness me, it's complicated, isn't it? So let's race on to the first one. So what does the gap look like? Well, The authority gap, when leaders, so in what I'm doing is in this column here, I'm saying if you are leading generalists, what would you actually have? So when you're leading a generalist team, leaders tend to have authorities. They have the ability to tell you what to do, their team what to do. They have the ability to be assertive, and what have you. Whereas when they're dealing with experts, of course, because of this lack of knowledge, they might lack some authority. They certainly might lack technical authority in managing their team. So how does it show up for leaders? Well, the sort of things that you hear leaders say is, I don't have technical ability to challenge. I've got broad knowledge. I worry about being credible in front of my expert. And, I take a broader view, and they don't, whereas the experts are saying to their leaders, and indeed, this is what leaders tell us their experts say to them, you are not going to tell me what to do in this technical area. They're deep specialists. Technical knowledge is all that matters. That's pretty much what they think. There is a credibility gap in relation to, I've got more knowledge than you have, so I can't really take seriously what you're telling me about. And of course, rather than this broader view, the experts tend to be very focused, operating inside the bubble. So the consequence for leaders of experts is they feel their leadership role is slightly depowered because of this lack of authority. And experts have been known they might think this, and occasionally they'll say it. They'll say, well, given that I'm the specialist here, why don't I lead and you follow? Which is an uncomfortable place for the leaders to be. Second gap is the relationship gap. So when leaders are, again, in the red, what happens as far as a leader running a team of generalists? Their leadership style allows them to direct and to lead and to coach. They're really the manager, and they had sort of broad application. Whereas with the experts, the leadership style has to be more guiding and facilitating. Leaders of experts in particular tell us that they feel like they really need to advise very carefully. Straight direction doesn't work. They do need to be seen to be very supportive of their experts, linking to organizational goals, facilitating resources, really very much as the experts are saying here, clearing the way for the experts to do their best work, giving them what they need. And in the back of the mind, the leader is sort of saying, can't really afford to lose this technical talent. And the experts have been known, they certainly would think it, but they have been known to, say, well, remember what might happen if I were to leave. Many of the most difficult leader of experts relationships with experts are where there is a single point of failure. That is to say that particular expert knows more about X than anyone else. And if they were to leave, then X would be a real problem. That technical capability would be a real problem to fix. So as a consequence, you talk to leaders of experts, and in some instances they shrug and say, in this particular relationship, the expert is really in charge. Quite often you have experts, particularly those who've been around for a long while, sort of saying, well, really, I need to manage the performance of my manager to help me do my work and give me the resources. Let me know, Darren, if there are any questions, comments, or disagreements. Contribution gap. So contributes to growth by coaching on all skills. So a number of you on this call are, leaders of teams and are very experienced leaders, and you'll spend a lot of time coaching your reports on a whole range of things, in terms of, how they work with the rest of the team, how they acquire knowledge, how they learn to become leaders. There's a whole range of things that you can coach those people on. The problem when you're coaching experts is that contribution can be limited, because you can only really coach them on skills and maybe some corporate knowledge. It's very difficult to coach an expert on their technical capability if the expert is more expert than you are. So you can see the sort of things we hear leaders say is, I can't coach on technical, only broader skills. I can help the expert build knowledge around navigating the organization, contributing in areas where the expert sees less value. But at the end of the day, there's a respect gap to a certain extent, and the experts are, generally speaking, quite dismissive of all this sort of broader stuff. They quite enjoy working in their bubble. It's where they feel they add most value. The corporate stuff is not really my job. I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, we've worked probably with nearly 2,000 experts around the world. And you can count on the fingers of two hands how many people have actually read the strategy deck of their organization, and an even fewer number who've actually done anything about it. So, they tend to be operating in their bubble. And, when it comes to the contribution, typically, look, there's a technical conference where all of the people, just like me in the world, are going to be in Vegas. I'd like to attend. That's how you can really make a contribution, to be send me off to Vegas. So the ability to help experts grow appears limited to the leaders, and the experts see growth perceived as technical and from elsewhere, certainly not their leader, who doesn't necessarily understand what they do. Prioritization gap is a really, really big issue. And I think almost always, when we work with experts, their development plans tend to involve getting better at prioritization. So, if we've got a team of, you're leading a team of generalists, pretty much those generalists are dependent on you. They're dependent on you for their development, their promotion, and so on. Whereas when you're leading a team of experts, quite often the reports are independent of the leader. So what do I mean? Well, first and foremost, experts tend to have more than one master, and they certainly have more than one person giving them work, and this creates, priority confusion. So priorities are confused. The leader is often dependent on the expert to say what's most important that needs doing most, because the technical expert knows and the leader doesn't. Leaders of experts tell us that everything is a negotiation and an arm wrestle, in terms of getting things done. And some of the leaders report that, their report is perceived as difficult. So, the whole conversation is difficult. From the expert's perspective, it's, look, I've got multiple masters. That gives them some freedom of operation in terms of deciding what to do. They resist direction. They don't like having priorities imposed. And they certainly don't like lots of changing priorities. And, this is the sort of thing that you hear them say when you realize my needs are different. So from a leader of experts, we hear from them that, the relationship is often strained because of this priority and work piece. And from an expert's point of view, it's frustrating. Activity gap. Single supervisor, multiple supervisor. I kind of covered this in the last slide. The report has extra responsibilities working for other colleagues. Agreed plans and priorities get dislocated. And crucially, contributions where visible, might not be visible. So, let's say I am, having a conversation with Darren, my colleague, about, how well he's contributing. Well, I might only see actually part of what he's doing. There might be some really fantastic and mission critical organizational work that he's doing in other areas of the business that's simply not visible to me. And that makes things like, appraisals and things like that really difficult. And, it gives experts this independence, really, of ability to say, look, you're asking me to do X, but Freddie has asked me to do Y. So it's quite difficult. Performance gap. So this is really one of the most fundamental difficulties that leaders of experts report to us, which is because of all of the things I've mentioned up to this point, managing an expert's performance is difficult. Because the actual performance might be opaque, the value creation might be invisible. Assessing the technical performance is really difficult because your report is more technical than you are, and they'll roll their eyes and say, you don't really actually know what I do. You don't realize how I add value. How can you possibly assess my performance when you're not as technical as me? And it's a key issue that comes up again and again when we talk to leaders of experts. And the consequence is appraisal time is a nightmare. And of course, as far as the experts, and of course, this is a lovely position for experts to have. Appraisal time is irrelevant, and it's all HR bull dust. And we've worked with a lot of experts who say exactly that. They think it's a ridiculous imposition. There is no one better in the organization to assess my performance than me. And I think I'm doing a really great job. So why don't you put that on your form and submit it? Finally, there's the career gap. I think this is the last one. And all of the things that we've talked about so far sort of kind of lead into the fact that, you know, one of our jobs as leaders, and certainly the leaders of experts have this responsibility as well, is to build the capability of the people who report to us and to, you know, assist them in building, you know, really vibrant and fulfilling careers. And if all of a sudden you can't praise them and you're not really managing their activity and they're claiming that you don't understand what value they're adding and so on, then your ability to actually help them with their career is limited and perceived by the experts as you know, something you can't help with. So vertical growth, particularly with a lot of experts, is not aspired to, and a lot of leader of experts, you know, the appraisal conversations about when do you want to get promoted, a lot of technical experts never want to get promoted. The last thing they ever want to do is to be management, and yet these people are very mission critical. You need them to keep doing what they're doing. That again tends to mean that you actually don't want them to move away and do extra things, because they're so critical in what they're doing for you that they would be very difficult to replace. So all of it puts leaders of experts in a very difficult position. And in the end, the career contribution is, well, okay, here's a plane ticket to Vegas. You know, we'll send you on that technical conference to keep you happy and keep you fulfilled. I've got a few CIO friends who have done exactly that with their, you know, Unix engineers or, you know, software architects or what have you. And typically they say, we send them off to Vegas believing that they're going to come back and be better. But actually they're worse. They come back worse because they've been hanging out with all sorts of experts like themselves, and they've been getting together about how useless management is. Vegas, generally speaking, is not a suggested option. And of course, for experts, it's really problematic. You know, they don't feel this career progression. They don't want to go into management. They gradually feel they're more and more underappreciated, underdeployed, and underrecognized. The future looks like Groundhog Day, one of my favorite movies. So in other words, the same day occurring again and again and again. You're trapped in this loop of fixing the same problems and, you know, dealing with users who, you know, just fail to read any documents that you send them. And as a consequence, career contribution from the manager is perceived as zero, trending to negative, like a bad place. So these are the gaps. I might stop there and ask Darren whether anybody has made any comments or questions or what have you, and before I move on to the solution to all of this.
There's been no questions in the chat, but we could potentially stop if anybody wants to voice their question. All right.
I'm wowing them. Excellent. So let's move on. I mean, feel free, just throw things into chat. So the big question, which I suspect most of you have come on the call for, is what do we think the solution is? How do we help leaders of experts overcome these gap barriers? So rather like most leaders, you know, there are two fundamental conversations that most leaders need to have with their team members to make that relationship really effective and what have you. You have to be able to manage performance of the member of your team and to help them perform better. And that member of team needs to see that you are helping them perform better. You know, there has to be that really clear show. And the second thing is, if you can't contribute to career, you know, you need to have those career conversations, those development conversations. We call them growth conversations. So we found that experts don't really like the word development because they think mostly they're the finished article. You know, you had to have a really good conversation around helping them grow their career. And very often with experts, that means having more influence, more impact, working at a higher level, getting a seat at the decision-making table, even though they're a technical expert. It's making a difference. So our suggestions are that, you know, these are the two things that we need to get leaders of experts to be really good at, these two conversations: performance expectation conversation and a career conversation. So how do we do it? These vital conversations, energizing their experts to performance, encouraging experts to be good corporate citizens, getting buy-in to learning new types of skills, and building aspiration to be master expert. These are the sorts of things. We will send all of you this deck post, so I'm not intending to go into this slide in detail, but I do want to focus on a couple of things that we think make a big difference. In fact, we don't think it, we know it. So there's crucial tools and skills to have these two conversations. The first tool is a career ladder for experts. I was lucky enough to be hearing the presentations of people who are technical experts coming off a program as a sort of a graduation last week here in Australia, very large tech IT company. And the 6 presentations I heard, of those 6, 4 of them mentioned that the most important thing about the entire program that they'd been on was they suddenly had a roadmap for career growth, which is basically a capability framework for experts. So this is a fundamental building block that if you want to help leaders of experts in your organizations manage experts better, they have to have a capability framework for experts. Most organizations have a capability framework for their leaders. You know, you're a frontline leader, or you're a middle manager, or you're a senior leader, and there's particular behaviors, but one doesn't, generally speaking, in most instances that we're aware of, work. So how does this work? You can see there's 3 levels of expertship. Most people, by the way, who are experts in the way that I've been describing them are at expert level. They're not operating at master expert level. And indeed, the fact that master expert level exists is, you know, that's invisible to them.
Okay, so we just have to wait. You can do it when your eggs are done.
If we could turn Faith off, that would be great. And what does the model look like? Well, it looks like this. You know, or here's one opportunity for you. You can get this model from us, by the way. You don't have to buy it. So there's a relationship domain, there's a value domain, and a technical domain. And you know, you can. And the trick here is that once you have this building block, it enables conversations. So as an example, here's the relationship domain, the 3 expert levels. This is pretty much what most technical experts believe their job is. The relation, it says relationship domain up at the top. I've put this in the wrong spot. I'm going to actually just come out and change it because it's that wrong. This should be there. All right, there we go. So this is what most experts believe. Can everybody now see that change?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So they believe that the technical domain is all they need to be good at. They need to be good at their expert knowledge. They need to be good at solutioning, and they need to be reasonably good at knowledge transfer. The reality, of course, is that once you show them a full capability framework, there's these 2 other areas that they need to be good at. They need to be good at creating value, and they need to be good at, you know, personal impact, stakeholder engagement, collaboration. And this, generally speaking, is a you know, a huge revelation for most experts we work with, because they feel like they're only judged on that bit. That's the only bit that really we talk to them about. You know, did you do those spreadsheets well? You know, did you do that software development well? Did you build that new program well? Whereas actually, in order to get up to master expert, they're going to need to acquire these skills as well. I can't tell you how excited managers of experts are when they see this framework. They suddenly realize here is a framework that we can have a reason. And this is how they use it. So, you know, we give this graphic to the expert and we sort of say to them, well, can you work out, please, where you are on the map? You know, self-assess yourself. And you can see this is a reasonably typical one where, you know, the experts, you know, probably mark themselves here at the expert level. By the way, when you're watching an expert doing this, it's quite fun, because if you're doing it live, because their pen sort of hovers over the master expert level up here, because they think they're a master expert. So, you know, they won't, but when they actually read the behaviors, which is external, transformational, strategic, you know, making long-term difference, longer horizon, you know, they sort of grunt and realize they have to actually circle these 3 here. Generally speaking, you know, business acumen, which is market context and value impact, way down at a specialist level. Even collaboration sometimes when they look at the behaviors. And of course, as soon as you've got this ability to actually get people to look holistically at you know, what their performance should look like, and what it takes, particularly to get up to this level, then suddenly you're energizing your expert around their career, and you're able to do, you're able to have a better conversation. So from a performance perspective, what typically happens is that, you know, in a conversation previously has all been about technical domain, but suddenly you have the ability to explain these other 6 areas where, you know, the expert has to do well. And of course, these 6 areas are areas where the master, the leader of experts can absolutely help the expert because typically the leader is pretty good at these areas here. And suddenly you've changed the scenario. You've got an ability where the expert is really beginning to think about, well, I need to get better at all of these things. So how can you help me? The second thing, so, you know, the ability to explain a career roadmap, the ability to talk about these 3 levels of expertship, define a growth path for experts, be able to explain and persuade experts to the enterprise skills, which are those skills, you know, these ones here, relationship domain and value domain, we call enterprise skills. These are technical skills. You know, they understand that's what they need. And very often, once you've had that conversation with experts, you know, they say sort of, why on earth, you know, didn't you show me this model before? Kirsten is on the call. You could email her and she will send you later on today the relevant chapters of our Master Expert book about exactly how to have this conversation with experts and what it means to them if you are interested. So the second tool is coaching ability. Now, most of you who are OD and L&D on the call will know that leaders believe they can coach, have really great coaching conversations. But generally speaking, you know, there's a lot of growth opportunity in there. And, you know, we have a pretty simple mantra here, which is that you can't teach an expert anything. The expert has to decide to want to learn something. And that automatically means that you telling an expert they need to grow this skill, or you telling an expert, you know, that this technical ability is needed, is generally speaking doesn't work. So what you have to do is to have a really good coaching conversation with them. And we spend a lot of time working with leaders of experts, getting them to the point where their coaching skills really enable them to help the expert discover that there's a higher level that they want to aspire to, and then help them work out how they get there. So we've, you know, just put the iGrow model up here, which is the model that we use. It's a derivation of the Grow model. Again, you can get some details from Kirsten about that if you want. And so the conversation becomes this, right? Okay, so development conversation, here are the gaps. What are we going to do about it? And, you know, probably in order to work hard on these 3, then, you know, we probably have to do some knowledge transfer first, because you need to, you know, transfer some of the grunt work that you're doing out to colleagues or other people or junior experts, so you can really focus on adding value at this higher level. And suddenly what happens is the development plan, or the personal growth plan as we call it, becomes highly relevant to the experts. They actually realize that to get to the next level, they have to be good at these 6 as well as these 3. And as a consequence, they're suddenly busy writing. One of our CIO friends said to me a couple of years ago, having done one of our programs, something happened to him that had never, ever happened in his entire career, which is one of his really technical experts asked for 15 minutes in his diary and brought in a personal development plan under his own volition and asked the CIO for feedback on it. His comment was, normally when we you know, ask people to fill in a development plan, the most technical experts simply roll their eyes. But in this instance, because they see what the point of it is and they see that growth is capable, you know, suddenly you've changed and of course, what you've really changed is the ability of the leader of experts to assist the technical expert in developing their career, developing their impact, and so on. And, you know, the way to do this is to build a development plan using the growth bridge. I'm not going to spend loads of time on this, but again, if you're interested in how to do this, you know, just contact us and we can send you some chapters out of this book, which we have written, which is How to Be a Master Expert, which is quite long. You don't have to read from start to finish, and it's particularly good for insomniacs. So what do leaders need? They need a coaching conversation with their experts about professional growth. They need to the ability to explore desired state, the expert, future state, assist them build their own plan. It has to be their own plan. They have to own it, because otherwise they're not going to do it. And they need to develop and deploy outstanding question techniques, empathetic intense listening skills, and the ability to stop their inclination to jump to solution, which is what they do. And what leaders of experts say to us at the end of this process is, so let me get this right. In my development conversation, all I need to do is ask thoughtful questions. Well, that's pretty much it, as well as obviously listen to their answers. Okay, action plan for L&D. What can you do straight away to help your leaders of experts lead their experts more effectively and help their experts grow? First is illumination, like really get them to understand that leading experts requires some different tactics. It's not that experts are difficult, they're different, and leaders need to think differently and be primed for action. This is a really fundamental starting point, and you can just take them through this deck, or you can have a conversation about what they find easy. Most of those points in the gaps just come directly out of leaders of experts. Get a group of leaders of experts together. They will tell you all those things very, very quickly. It'll take them 10 to 15 minutes to come up, probably with a longer list. Structure. You have to give your leaders of experts tools like a capability framework that helps them have these conversations. It's what we do with people leaders all the way through our business. So they need a similar sort of thing for experts, and you can borrow, steal, or create your own. Some of our clients have created their own. Some of them have simply adopted our one, and some of them have I assume have found something somewhere else. We can't find anything anywhere else. So the benefit is the leader has a roadmap and can offer it to their experts. It's a place to anchor all the conversations around performance and growth. And it completely changes the relationship once you've got that in. Build coaching skills. I think I've banged on about that enough. Socialize growth options. So this is a challenge, because technical experts believe that the only things that should go into development plans or growth plans is the acquisition of more technical knowledge. It's the Vegas ticket, right? We've actually built a book, which again you can get from us, which has 102 development ideas for experts, and it has plenty of chapters about how they can build their technical expertise, but most of the book is about how they can build those enterprise skills. We found that experts actually need some help building those plans, because it's so outside what they've been doing for the last few years. And then a harder thing, and I have to admit that number 5 is a bigger piece of work for most OD and L&D people, is you need to think about expert career paths. We have, you've seen in our capability framework, specialist, expert, and master expert. Typically in most organizations, those 3 graduations don't exist. The very best organizations who deploy technical experts to their greatest potential, have like a guru level of pay and kudos and status, where you're not a people leader, you're simply a technical leader, but you have the same sort of status as a very senior people leader. You know why? Because you're super important to the business. Okay, so I think I've just mentioned these 3 things. So now I'm sorry about this. We're now to the 60 seconds shameless plug part of the exercise, which is we do a program for a 1-day program with a couple of coaching sessions, which helps leaders of experts nail this stuff. We give them this book. It's a 1-day workshop. They then do 2 1-day coaching sessions. Those 1-hour coaching. So those coaching sessions are about helping them plan the most difficult conversation that they have ahead of them with their most difficult expert. They tell us it's transformational. It's got very high net promoter scores. And there's a couple of dates we've got going on in November and December. So typically these courses are done in-house for our clients. But we're going to run 2 public courses at the end of this month. I might say to those of you who are from OD and L&D, a good way to steal stuff is to attend the program and see what we do, and then redo it in your organization. The other thing I might say to OD and L&D people on the call is this program really works for HR business partners who are servicing technical teams, because it gives them the skills to help the leaders of experts in those departments really do a great job.